Welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz. Psychic medium Stephanie Burke is away this weekend. She's down in Virginia, I think, with Porter. They have something going on down there, so hopefully they're having a good time. We're going to have a good time here talking about the paranormal, which is what we do here each and every Saturday night. And we are going to... That thing's going to beep the whole show. And I guess I can go louder. I don't want to go too loud, but I have to go a certain volume so it doesn't beep. Is that all right? Does that sound okay? All right. We have this alarm here in our studio that lets you know if
dead air.
If not, it can be a variety of things. It can be that the total system failure. It could be that something's wrong with the network. It can be that something doesn't switch over when it's supposed to switch over. But all this week, it's been beeping nonstop. And I want to say it's the ghosts, but I don't think it is.
Okay.
I know the engineer was messing around with some of the audio.
It's got to be ghosts.
But
What else could it be?
I was trying to blame the ghost. Well, what I was thinking is...
aliens.
Here's the thing, though. It didn't happen until we conducted that experiment here last week. Last week, we had the live experiment of the Estes method, where... Moniz, have you seen this, the Estes method? So basically what you do is you blindfold yourself and you put on like noise-canceling headphones so that you can't hear the people around you. And then you plug it into a spirit box, a ghost box, an SB7, what have you.
Okay.
And you ask questions, and well, you have the other people ask questions, and the person who is blindfolded and wearing the headphones just says whatever they hear come through the sweep. So it's like a double blind. You can't hear the question, so you're just saying out whatever it is that that you're hearing. And we got maybe a couple things. I went back and watched it. Maybe a couple things that I could say maybe possibly a hit, but not enough for me to say overwhelmingly that we were communicating with something or somebody.
All right.
But I think you got to go a little closer on that microphone too.
All right.
There you go. Yeah, they swapped the mics out.
Okay.
So,
yeah, the other one's usually a lot hotter.
Yeah, that one you got to be a little bit more up on. But so maybe we fired something up here when we did that. Maybe there's something that was dormant here in the studio. I mean, we know that there's activity in the studio, in the building. But maybe there was something that decided to reach out to us since we reached out to it. Remember how much trouble we used to have back in the old days?
Okay. I think that was more equipment than spirits.
Well, some of it was us. Some of it was not knowing what we were doing. But, we would have just those random firings of the computer. And we had Keith Johnson come in and actually bless the studio, because... we really should have done that from the beginning if we thought about it. Because if we're going to be talking about the kind of topics that we talk about, it wouldn't hurt to have that extra layer of protection. And a lot of the times I feel like when Stephanie's here, she gives us a leg up a little bit because she can see or hear things that we can't. So that maybe if there was something around, we would have some advanced warning from her. But when she's not here, then we're kind of screwed because we're on our own. So it wouldn't be... maybe we need another blessing of the studio just to be safe, as they are coming in here and they're upgrading things, and they're going to be redesigning the studio at some point. There's going to be construction in here, so that might just stir some things up. So it might not be a bad idea to get some blessings done. We can see maybe Keith will come back or Stephanie can do it or what have you, but we'll get some of that spray that she sells. We'll have her bring in a bottle of that and kind of just spray it all around the studio and see if we can't just make sure that we have the good juju coming in here as they start tearing things apart. But
what about the equipment? Are they going to bring in stuff from this century?
No, they've been doing a good job of upgrading things. Yeah. We're getting better and better. The only thing that I think is going to change equipment-wise is I did ask if we could get some different mic arms. But other than that, we're doing okay.
Well, this board is a lot better than the other one.
The old board was certainly vintage, we'll call it, and it's still here. It's in the cave, so it's still around. So I wouldn't make too many jokes about it because you might come in one Saturday and he'll just have replaced it just because we were making fun. But you should see the one that's in the news booth. Now that one's another vintage board. So we are going to talk about the paranormal tonight. Coming up a little bit later on, we will be joined by Michael Banti of Weird Fresno, and we're going to talk with him. Listen, we have to change things a little bit here on the show. I was thinking about this week, and I think that the passing of Art Bell has made me somewhat reflective of what it is that we are doing here and why we're doing what we're doing. And last week we had our Art Bell tribute show, and it's been in my mind that we originally started this show off wanting to be more like Art, letting the guests come on, tell their story, and asking the pertinent questions, but not trying to discredit, not trying to, and not trying to make things about us. And I think that what's happened is that's gotten a little bit away from us. Maybe it's longevity, maybe it's being here for, over 12 years now, doing all the shows that we have. Maybe it's you get a sense of complacency a little bit because Saturday night you'll be back in here doing it again. And so I think you lose some of the edge over time. And I feel like we've lost some of that edge, and I think we need to bring it back. I think we need to get back into sharing good information and stories with the audience. And less promotion, less about where we're going to be and, what events we're going to be at and all that kind of stuff. It's important to let people know that, of course, because people want to know about these things, but there's a tendency to talk about that too much. And I feel like that's, although, it's not like the audience is writing me angry emails, but I just feel like we're getting away from the heart of what it is that we want to do. So I'm using Art's passing as a little bit of a kick in the pants to say, let's get back to just talking about weird stuff.
Back to our roots.
That's,
yeah. No,
I mean, we did it for so long, and it was really just a matter of, I think as time has gone on, just feeling more and more like, okay, we've got this. We know where we want to go. We know what we want to talk about. Instead of saying, let's just throw a topic out there and see where it takes us. So I think it's almost like having less direction, but it'll be more of a direction overall, if that makes sense. We have an idea of what it is that we want to do and what kind of topics that we want to cover, but let's not go into it with any preconceived notions about what the conversation will be. And so that's why I think tonight's show will be a perfect fit with Michael Banti later on, because, I go to his website. I've seen some of the stories. I chatted with him last year when there was the woman who thought that she was a mermaid, and we can get into that a little bit too later on. But I just want to hear the weird stories about a place that I've never been. And I think that the audience wants to go on, no pun intended when talking about Art, but I think they want to take that same ride. And so that's what I think we're going to start getting back to. So if you have any ideas of topics that you want to have covered or guests that you want to hear us speak with, just email us spookykrew@spookysouthcoast.com, and we will try and do our best to bring them on. Now there's some ground rules though that we have to lay for this, because you have to have I guess parameters in place. Because if we say we're willing to talk to anybody and everybody, well, that opens the door to, you really can't say no to somebody because you opened up that invitation. And we've decided over the years that there's some level of, at least a line that we have to draw of who we're going to have on the show and who we're not. We decided a long time ago to stop just having, random paranormal groups or investigators as guests, because they would come on and they would share their experiences being out there in the field and being out there and investigating, and they would just tell us stories that sounded like the same stories that other investigators were telling us. Not that there's anything wrong with the work that they're doing, but there just wasn't enough differentiation between them. So we made a conscious decision to say, if we're going to have an investigator on or a group on, it's going to be because it fits into the topic that we were discussing.
Yeah, something specific relating to a particular event or what have you.
Yeah, it could be, that they're the group that frequently investigates a specific location. Like when if you're going to talk about the Villisca Axe Murder House, you have Johnny Hauser on. If you're going to talk about, the Stanley Hotel, you have on the group that investigates regularly there. That makes sense. And also, of course, if you can find a topic where an investigator can add a perspective to it, then you add them in. But just basically say, let's spotlight this group, let's spotlight this investigator, it just doesn't work. And the other part of that is there's a million paranormal shows right now on the internet where that same thing happens.
And then you get all of the paradrama that goes along with that. Oh, you talked to them, but you didn't talk to us.
Right. Then somebody says, why did you have them on? They just, they fake stuff and all. And I don't want to get into all that. So it's very rare that you'll hear us talking to a paranormal investigator that is somebody that we don't know. And if it's just talking about their investigations. If it's something else that they can add to a discussion, then that's a different story. And we've done that too as well, where, part of it is too, if you could just be a common person that has stories to tell, experiences to share, and that's okay. And there's nights when we do those shows where we say the phone lines are open, call in with your experiences. But I don't want to just have somebody who has paranormal experiences on unless there's a real, ongoing thing happening, or if they've written a book about it or what have you, because otherwise it's the same thing for the audience. It's, well, they have the same experiences that other people have. Why are they any different? Why are you having them on the show? So when we have those open line nights, and the phone lines are always open here, so you can always call in and discuss anything that's on your mind, paranormally speaking. But we have those open line nights where people can call in and share those experiences, because I think if we try and do that same idea of featuring those stories, it will, A, get repetitive, but B, for a lot of people, they'll say, I don't see the reason to have them on to talk about that. So those are just some of the ground rules that we've set up over the years. And I know that there's a whole wealth of people out there that we could talk to, that people say, why haven't you had this person on? Why haven't you had that person on? I'll give Nick Redfern as an example. The couple of times that we've had Nick Redfern on the show, it's been a pre-record. And there's a reason for that. He's not available on Saturday nights. He works on Saturday nights, so he's not available. And there's other people who we've tried to have on for years that, maybe on the convention circuit or have events or are out investigating every Saturday night, so they can't come on because of the schedule of the show. And we try, when we do a pre-record, to say, well, let's earmark those times for these people that we need to make special accommodations for. But in general, a Saturday night at 10 o'clock is kind of a tough time to get guests. And the fact that we've been able to do 534 episodes now and bring on, I'd say, probably over 300 guests.
Easily.
I guess out of those shows. That sounds like a pretty safe bet. So the fact that we can get 300 different people to join us on a Saturday night is pretty impressive. So that's another challenge that we face with the time slot, but the time slot is what it is. It's when we can have radio time, and it's when we have availability in our schedules. So with those caveats in mind, please recommend whoever you think we should talk to or whatever topics you'd like to hear us discuss, because we want to make the show as weird and as spooky as it can get.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a wide range of places that we can take it under those guidelines that we just haven't gone to in a long, long time. And so that's what I want to get back to. I want to get back to the roots of why we wanted to do this show in the first place. And I want to listen to stories that when I go home and I go to get out of the car at 2 or 3 in the morning and it's dark and it's creepy, I want those stories still in the front of my mind. And to make me think twice before I get out of the car. And maybe make me run to the door a little bit. Because that's when I think the show is at its best. And I think that's where we built up this audience over the years. And I want to start delivering that to them again.
Well, a lot of the audience, when I've talked to them in person, they all love our, we'll call it our organic shows, or potpourri shows, where we're just throwing, ideas around.
You're going to talk even closer to that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I can hear the beeping in the background.
Sorry about that. It's like when I've talked to listeners outside of here, and they all want more of the the organic stuff, like I said, what we do with our potpourri shows and just sharing the ideas, because to them, that I guess that seems more authentic.
And I will make a deal with the audience. We will do more of that, but you have to live up to your end of the bargain. You have to call in and share with us as well, because a lot of people like to listen to the show, and I know that not everybody's involved with the show Saturday nights at 10 o'clock. A lot of them are catching the show later on. But, you know, we are willing to do that kind of stuff, but we need more from you. You need to call in and interact with us, because that's what's going to make it stronger. I know that people like to listen to us talk, but I don't think that that's what the whole show should be about all the time.
No, it should be about what the guest has to say.
Right. I think it's fine if occasionally we share our thoughts and feelings on things, but you can only do that so much.
I was going to say, also, if you want to just dip your toes in the water, just join us in the chat room. And,
right.
You know, ask a few questions there, and then when you feel comfortable about calling, sharing your experiences, give us a call.
And I have to say, I know the general feeling that people have about internet chat rooms is they say, well, I know what's going to happen when I go in there. But our chat room is not like most internet chat rooms. It's very respectful. Everybody gets along with each other. They get to know each other in there every Saturday night. They're always going off on side tangents and conversations amongst themselves. And it's like Cheers in there, because, you know, all of a sudden Jimmy McCluskey will check in and everybody will say, Jimmy, you know, like that, just as an example. So it's certainly a place where you can go and have a dialogue and a conversation and get used to the folks and realize that that's who you're talking to. And that might make you feel more comfortable to call in
like-minded people
and discuss. And that's what we're trying to do here. We have a community of listeners, and we want you to come along and be part of that community. So we'll try and serve that community a little bit better instead of kind of serving our own self-interest. I was hanging out on the BellGab forum and talking with some of the folks there. And now that is a place where they can be savage. On the
I'm
internet,
sure.
They really are. But I love it. And so I made the point that I'm starting to become, you know, the show's starting to become more George and less Art, and I don't want that. So the folks in there know what I'm talking about, but, you know, I want to make it more about serving the topics than it is serving anything else. So it's all on the table. 508-996-0500. Coming up in the next hour, we'll talk with Mike Banti about weird Fresno, and I think that it says something about this area too, that we've been able to, you know, we'll talk about Mike's area with Fresno, but I think it says something about this area that for 12 plus years now, we've been able to frequently talk about weird things here on the South Coast. And we certainly could explore more of those topics, because there's a whole bunch of weird stuff we haven't even gotten to.
Oh, yeah.
In 12 plus years of covering things here. And I just think that there's, for some reason, an interest level in people in other places. They want to know about this weird part of the country. We'll continue, of course, to do our Bridgewater Triangle show every year. That's always a popular one. We've done the Haunted Tour Route 44 episode in the past. Maybe it's time to revisit that. So I have a night coming up where I think it's going to be sometime in May. Might be a little later. I'll have to check the date again. But I think we're going to dispatch Moniz out into the field this night, because there's a bridge where there's phenomena that takes place, and a parsonage right next to it where phenomena takes place. So I think we might send you out into the field, because this is the 100th anniversary of an accident.
I was going to say, why does this sound familiar?
I don't know. We'll talk about it off the air, because I don't want to make promises yet, because I have to reach out to the person that is going to set all this up for us. But it's in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay, so it's not that
no, it's not far at all.
I think I know where you're talking about, but we'll discuss it.
We will. And but those are the kind of shows that I think people like, people respond to. They like when we are focusing on hyper-local things, and when we're showing them that we have these, and maybe they have similar stories where they are, but maybe they don't.
Don't take this the wrong way. That's some of my favorite shows, because I actually get to go out to the places. I actually get to be there on the spot. you know, I like you guys hanging out in the studio, but, you know,
But there's
I'm happier out in the field.
and there's also an excitement level with that of, you know, you're going into this not knowing what could happen.
Oh, yeah.
And with that happening, you know, with that situation of not knowing what could happen, it creates edgier moments for you, but it creates edgier moments for the audience too. I mean,
Well, we've had scary occasions
one of the first times we ever sent you out into the field for a show was the Dover Demon episode.
Yep. That was a great show,
And what happens? The police show up.
Yep. Twice.
You know, so you know things like that you can't take into account for. You know, now we know ahead of time to let them know that we're going to be there. But you know, but these are the kind of things that I think make for good radio, and
It's also
make for
just past the
interesting stories.
anniversary of that, too.
Yeah, it was.
A couple of weeks ago, a week ago?
What would it have been? The 41st.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, because it was what 77, if
Yeah.
I'm right. So yeah, so the 41st, and we're coming up on what the
Coming up on May.
no, but the Roswell anniversary this year is the
71st.
Yeah. So, I'm like, I remember all the way when we talked about the 60th anniversary of that.
I was there.
I know that just goes to show how long we've been doing this show and how old we're getting. We can say, I remember when it was the 50th anniversary of this and we were covering things. But yeah, I think certainly more of that stuff will be coming forward in the future. And if you have any places like that you can suggest, I definitely want to. I know that we've done the Route 44 episode in the past where we have sent people to different locations along Route 44 locally. I want to take that all the way down Route 44, down into Texas.
Doesn't go into Texas, goes into New York.
No, from following this 44, it goes into Texas.
I'm pretty sure it goes from Plymouth up to someplace up in upstate New York.
Well, wherever it goes.
Okay.
We will follow it outside of the immediate area. And because, you know, if there's red-headed hitchhikers on every road.
Yeah.
Like those stories exist everywhere. But maybe we dispatch people in multiple areas on the same stretch of road where it's been seen. Or, you know, so some of the other ideas that we've had too in the past is like Route 66, doing the same thing with Route 66, having people all stretched down there, you know, that all stretched out across that. So these are some of the things that we can get into. This I thought this U-Haul was about to drive into the window.
So did I.
This U-Haul is pulling up to the station and it got really, really close to the window, and I thought we were going to be a news story for a moment there. Let's just kind of watch for a moment and see what's going on here. I think something's happening at the cell phone place, so it might be related to that.
Okay.
We're in a very strange corner of a shopping plaza here, for those unfamiliar.
And figures tonight I'm not
Well, we'll
possessing
see what happens.
a defensive item.
I'm sure they're just moving the cell phone stuff around. Matt, see if you can get us some deals.
I can use a new personal phone.
Yeah, Mark says he always heard Corpus Christi, Texas for Route 44. So, I don't know. Maybe it all depends. We have friends all over the country that we can stick on there in different spots. So we'll find a way to do that. Again, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420 is the numbers if you want to call in. Moniz, I do want to mention, even though we're going to cover it next week, we're going to have Tom Reed come on and join us next week. But he is in the news this week. You know, you've made mention
for the past couple of weeks, yeah.
You've made mention of Tom in the past about being involved in a very high-profile UFO case that has actually received its own plaque, its own monument.
It was part of actually Project Blue Book. His case was one of the featured cases in Blue Book, yeah.
And so now this monument that they've erected to this case is being moved
again,
and. So it'll be hitting the news wires. There was a story about it a few days ago, but there'll be some more stories locally. We were just talking with Tom before we went on the air, and when those stories come out, of course, we'll share them on the Spooky South Coast social media. But he's going to join us next Saturday night, and we can really discuss, you know, that case. And I know it's something that we've been working on for a while now.
It's a phenomenal case. Well, him and his twin brother had been abducted out western part of the state, 1967. And then later on, his grandmother, mother, and I believe his brother were in a vehicle that they went through a covered bridge and got abducted on the other side. The 40-something witnesses saw the craft and things like that. So it's a fairly well-known case.
And I think too that it's another one of those stories where it's known throughout the world, but at the same time it's a uniquely kind of local thing where it's a Massachusetts case. Correct. So I think that is something that a lot of people will enjoy. I also heard some discussion recently. There's been a lot of talk lately about the Bentwaters case. And I was thinking,
there's always talk about
but
that.
It seems to have been heating up different, he said, she said stuff that's been going on with it. And so I think maybe it's somewhere down the line this year we'll revisit that because we haven't discussed that in a while either.
Okay.
Is there any? Think about all the stuff that you've researched over the years, but then all the stuff that we've talked about here. Is there something that you want us to discuss on the show that we have never gotten around to?
Ooh. Actually, yeah. Well, we may have touched once or twice on it. I don't think we've done enough things on like sea serpents and lake monsters.
Absolutely, right.
We've done one or two shows, but I think that we've done a couple of Bigfoot ones, a good handful of specific UFOs and general UFOs, and more ghost shows than we can shake a stick at. But we really haven't touched on, like lake monsters, sea monsters, and other cryptids.
Well, we know the ghosts are our bread and butter.
Yeah.
But certainly, all weird topics are on the table.
And crop circles. Haven't really done much with those either.
Yeah, well, I think that we are sorely lacking in the crop circle stuff. We've done like one or two shows.
Yeah. I
do remember we had the guy on that had the crop circle song. That I know Matt Costa was a favorite. That was a favorite of yours. The guy that made the crop circle song.
Oh yeah. That used to pop up. I used to have it on my iPod back when we used to run music off of my iPod.
Right, like if we had stuff like EVPs or anything we had to play on the show, we always put them on your iPod.
And for some reason, I had something like, I don't know, maybe three and a half, maybe 1,000 songs or something, 3,500 songs, and that song would always come up randomly, more than any other song. I feel like. Okay. Which was. I don't know if it was welcoming, but it was hilarious.
I mean, I was a fan of, he would just pull up and he'd be playing the crop circle song.
Right.
I'd say, well, that's just Matt.
Yep.
That's not a surprise.
Well, it's a catchy tune.
Want me to reach out to Colin Andrews?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I there's even deeper, weirder stuff that we can get into that we've just never covered. I mean, a lot of alternative history stuff that we haven't covered.
Time travel ones. Or
we always say that we're going to do a time travel show, but it's hard to get the guests to come on that will talk about it because I don't know why.
They don't apparently have the time.
Well, I think they probably have already traveled back to where they came from. I know John Teeter listens to the show, so he does.
Yeah, he comes on the chat room every now and then.
So if he wants to, reach out, that's fine as well. And I'm still waiting for JC to call too. I thought for sure last week was going to be the week that he would actually call, or at least show up again in the chat room, but he didn't. So, but last week we did cover the Art Bell tribute show, Moniz, but you weren't here, so you didn't really get a chance to share your thoughts. I'm assuming that you were kind of overwhelmed a bit when you heard of Art's passing.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to him back in the day when, like I said, before paranormal radio was really like what it is today, and I was always up at night and whatever, going around, and process of driving back from places I was at, I got to listen to him, and he touched a lot of people. He's the one that got the paranormal out there. I mean, other than just to the truckers on the road in the middle of the night, but to the mainstream people.
Well, and I think too that it was kind of comforting to know that when you heard the callers call up, that you knew that there was other people that were into these same topics that you were.
Yeah.
And it's not like now where you can just go to a Facebook group or a message board or, just search paranormal on Twitter or what have you and see lots of people talking about it. I mean, in the 90s, a lot of people still didn't have access to the internet on a regular basis, in 94, 95.
Oh, God, no.
So it's a way for you to realize, hey, wait a minute, there's other people that think this is a valid course of research just like I do. And so it's got to be one of those things where you're an outsider, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, I have a community here. I have a group. And I think that's probably more important than anything is the fact that it took something that was abnormal and made it a little bit more normal, for at least for 4 or 5 hours a night.
Well, the way I look at it is before Art really came on the air, and he was in the early 90s, all you had was these various little conferences here and there. That was the only time you really got to meet up with a whole bunch of other people other than, you'd read somebody else's newsletter or, there would be a magazine and articles posted in various, particular types of magazines. But mostly it was you met up at conferences, and then Art started his show, and then everybody could be like, hey, this is something that's out and, I can listen to him every night or every other, whatever you had the time for. And he would bring the people that you would see in the conferences on with him. That's what made it good.
I mean, did you attend some of those conferences back in those days?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, what were they like? I mean, I'm assuming it wasn't like it is now where there's, thousands of people coming through the place.
Okay. How do I put this? I could say something, but I don't want to be offensive about it. Let's just say back in those days, it was more about the subject matter, not about the people.
Well, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, there's probably less people. So, like, now where you have to rent out an entire conference center, it was probably one conference room.
Let's put it this way: it was diehard interested people. People were there to find the information, not because this person was on this TV show or that TV show about it. These people were there to see what these presenters could present to them. Not being Stanton Friedman is Stanton Friedman. He's been the same all the way back in the day up until now. But a lot of the other, we'll call them TV icon people that are used to being seen on TV by other people. It's a lot different then than it is now, because back then they were just the person with the information. Now people see them as that's the person with the information that's on TV. Right.
There is a different layer of, like when you, even now, if you go to some of the conventions that are out there, people look at someone and say, oh, who are you? What do I know you from? What have I seen you on? Well, you haven't seen me on anything because I'm not on television. I'm just doing the work. And so then people are like, oh, that's really interesting, and kind of walk away. But those are the people that, you want to sit and listen to and see present. I mean, no knock on anybody because, our friends do it, but I want to go and I want to go and learn something if I'm sitting there in presentations. I don't want to watch somebody just do a question and answer session, because those inevitably turn into, remember that episode when you guys did this and did this? And like, I don't want that. I want to learn something, and I try when I give a presentation to provide some information that people might not have known about. Just because I think that that's the point of it. It's to, even if you only pick up one little thing that you didn't know before, you went there and you learned something.
Yeah. So
I think that that's what I find is what draws me into certain discussions, and why I find, if I'm ever at somebody's presentation, I try not to get up and walk out. But there's times that I'm like, I should just kind of get up and walk out, because I'm sitting there trying not to open my mouth and say something because, because that's just not polite. And I wouldn't want somebody, I don't mind when people ask questions and stuff during my presentations, but I don't want anybody to kind of take it over. And, but I have that feeling, but that's because I want to have conversations about things. And I think a lot of that is lost on a lot of these conventions is there's no like workshops where people are just kind of throwing. Where that ends up happening, believe it or not, is at the bar, the night before. That's why they have these VIP cocktail party things, because that's where a lot of the ideas are start to get exchanged. You've had a few drinks and you loosen up, and that's when you start, or if you go out to dinner or something, that's when you start talking about theories, as opposed to, just shaking hands with people and signing autographs as they come through the line. So there's still some idea exchange going on. It's just it's not the main purpose anymore, which I think is somewhat saddening, especially because, when you look at it, this is still to this day, even though they have a lot of these conventions and a lot of these events, a lot of the folks that are coming to them will say, I've never been to anything like this before. This is my first time coming to something like this. And so that's when you really want to start to show them, like, we can get together and have an exchange of ideas here.
Exactly. I miss the old conferences. One of the better ones that used to happen around here was in Connecticut, and it was called the Omega Conference. They used to have it every year near Hartford, middle part of Connecticut. But they would have all of the people like Linda Moulton Howe and Colin Andrews and Stanton and all of these, before they were really big names, out in the television world. Mm-hmm. And the presentations that they would put on were top notch. I remember Richard Hoagland talking about the monuments of Mars, and this is just after his book came out, and it had a lot of, really information-packed chapters in it pertaining to how NASA works. I found his description of what NASA goes through in terms of their process, what they weed out for adding in or subtracting out of what they tell the public. It's very telling. Mm-hmm. That people don't understand that NASA does scrub a lot of stuff that the general public doesn't see. But
that's also information that you're only going to get from that particular speaker.
Right.
And it's not something that's going to be regurgitated from one speaker to the next. And,
right.
Each person's going to kind of put their own twist on it or what have you. That's why I love John Tenney lectures, because he gives you something that you're not going to find somewhere else. He's done research that nobody else has done, and he's found stories and uncovered legends and things like that nobody else has looked into for hundreds of years. And that's why I feel like when I walk away from that, I feel like I've learned something and I'm better for it. I might forget it 10 minutes later because that's how my brain works, but at least I was enriched by going to that. And that's part of what I want to do with this show too, is make sure that we are enriching people by bringing the topics to them. And you mentioned, Stan Friedman and Richard Hoagland, and a lot of these guys became go-to people for television because they were on the lecture circuit.
Correct.
And because they were known as the authorities who knew this stuff inside and out. And it's so weird now that it's kind of, like, I look at some of the lineups for some of these conventions that are out there and these different events and things that are happening, and I say, I know that person, and I don't know what that person has to say that is going to interest a large portion of the attendance goers. And that's not a knock on anybody, but that's just saying, like, where are you going to take this that is somewhere new and somewhere different? And I think that it doesn't happen because a lot of the audience doesn't need that. They'd rather just go and sit and hear people keep saying the same things, maybe because it reinforces to them then that that's what's right. So if I really have reached the point where I can't take listening to anybody tell me the difference between a residual haunt and an intelligent haunt anymore.
Or what is an EVP?
Right. I can't, because I've heard it so much over the years. And I understand that there's always, new portions of the audience that don't know the difference. But my mind and my research and my investigations have led me to think that there isn't that line anymore. I don't think that there's a residual haunt and intelligent haunt anymore.
Okay.
I think there's residual energy, and I think that there's stuff that actually happens, but I don't even categorize that as a haunting anymore. I don't even it's just one of these things that happens. It's like when you shake up a soda bottle, you're going to get fizz.
And here, you can borrow this, an etherical echo.
Right, and that's just what it is. It's just going to keep happening, and so I almost say, okay, that's great. Let's not even worry about that anymore. Let's just leave it over there. You know, it's you eventually reach the point where you say documenting that doesn't interest you anymore.
Yes, the tide came in.
But that also, you know, but then there's people every day that still document the tide.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe just because it's not interesting to me doesn't mean that it wouldn't be interesting to somebody else. So I'm just trying to open my mind up to some more things here. We have about 10 minutes left in this hour, and I just want to point out this. I guess I have to. It's not very often that I do this, but I will tell Moniz, apparently you were correct on something. Mark says that Route 44 begins in Plymouth, Mass. And ends in Cohonson, New York. And he even wrote, I hate to admit it, but Moniz is correct, sir. So see, even he hates to admit it. It's funny because you inform us and educate us on so many things, but we hate to let you know when you're right about other things.
You know what I did before I became a scientist?
You apparently were a cartographer because you mapped all of Route 44.
Close. My parents owned a delivery service, so I was a delivery driver. So
you've been all over the place.
Yeah, New England. Yeah, I've driven all around here.
But so when even Mark is begrudgingly telling you you're right, and he's a guy that actually respects you. So all right.
Foolish mortals.
Well, and then one other thing that I wanted to discuss that was kind of going around this week, and I was. You know, we announced, Stephanie announced the cruise that she had been putting together.
Okay.
And it's something that has been in the works. She's been working on it for a while. Her and Porter have been, and they asked me to be a part of it. They've been working on it for a while. They finally were able to announce it. So if you want to find out more about it, wickedwaterscruise.com. When she comes back, I don't know when the next time she's in the studio. I know she's not here next week, but the next time we have her in, we can discuss it a little bit more. Again, we're going to try and get away from, the shameless self-promotion shows, but the wickedwaterscruise.com is the website. And if you're going to reserve, I will say this, there's a brief window that you can actually reserve your spot on the cruise by just putting $50 down. So if you go to wickedwaterscruise.com, use my promo code TIM, because Stephanie's not here, so we're not going to promote her promo code tonight. But if you put my promo code TIM, T-I-M, then you can only have to put $50 down to reserve your spot until April 30th. And then after April 30th, the reservation price goes up a little bit more. I think then it's $100 to reserve. So if you reserve now, just $50 to put down to say that you're coming along, use the promo code TIM, and that's refundable. So if you decide that you don't want to go, if you end up not being able to raise the money won't be due until the end of next January. The total complete. You can make monthly payments if you want, whatever it is that works for you. All the information is right there on wickedwaterscruise.com. But we're going to be going from Boston to Bermuda through the Bermuda Triangle. And last year, I went on the Strange Escapes cruise to Bermuda, and we went through the Bermuda Triangle. Same lane, same journey. And we went through the Bermuda Triangle. And when we did, we went out onto the deck of the ship, and we had a UFO watch. And we had some strange things go on, things that were not planes that we couldn't explain.
Yeah, out over the ocean, you're not getting small craft.
Well, and that's one of the things that I've been discussing with people is they say, when you're out there in the ocean, there's a lot of things that you can misidentify as being UFOs. I can't think of what that would be, because by the time you're at that point, most planes are so high up,
right,
that you're probably not seeing them.
You're seeing their navigation beacons,
but not as close and low as you would around here, where you're in the flight path. But like, what other things could I be mistaken for UFOs being out there?
Satellites and meteorites.
Meteorites are the only thing I could think of that would move at the speed of what we were seeing. Satellites generally they move quick. But it's
a predictable arc, yeah.
Yeah, and it's more like kind of like I know this doesn't make great radio, but they can see me on video, It's where you see something moving, and it's moving at a good clip, but you can still make out what's happening. We're seeing things that are like, shooting across the sky and shooting diagonally and then coming back another way.
But are you sure it's the same thing and not something
Well, I don't know.
crossing back?
I don't know that it is, but
see, once you get out away from land, you lose all of that light pollution that we have around here, and we have meteorites every 2 minutes visible in around here. There are plenty more that fall that generate light once you get up beyond the light pollution. I have a number of uncles that were in the Navy, Merchant Marines, and all of that, spent their life out on boats and ships. And they said, you see far more shooting stars than you ever will on land out in the middle of the ocean. It's like, because there's no light out there to pollute the nighttime sky. So any little light that happens up there, you get to see from miles.
Have you been on a cruise or been on a ship out?
I've been on a ship out. Yeah, I've been on a ship out in the ocean, not on a cruise.
Like I can do it on a cruise ship because I can always like not look out the window and just think I'm in a hotel. But it's really freaky to be out in the middle of nowhere on the water like that, and to like realize if you see something, it's, you know, there's no figuring out what it is. It's not like, you know, if we see a light in the sky here, we can call the New Bedford airport, or we can call, you know, different law enforcement agencies or what have you. Like if you see something out there, you're just having the experience and taking it with you. Yeah.
It's all you. Here's one. If you see something moving fast out up in the nighttime sky out in the ocean, don't be concerned. If you're watching it and you see it all of a sudden stop, then be concerned.
Okay. What if it lands in the water or it splashes down right
into
next
the water?
to us?
As long as it doesn't set the ocean on fire, you're good.
But certainly that is going to be part of the cruise. We're actually going to have a UFO watch. I gotta make a little bit of a change. I saw the schedule that's planned, and I just want to make sure that because they have us doing the UFO watch coming back from Bermuda, and I just got to make sure that it can happen at a time when we're actually moving through the triangle, because it doesn't make any sense to do it if we're not in the triangle.
You want me to help put together a protocol for you?
Sure. Yeah, we got plenty of time. It's not until May of 2019.
Yep. We've got more than enough time.
So we have plenty of time. But again,
a year.
Over. So again, if you want, because it's May 10th to the 17th of 2019. So if you want to take part, wickedwaterscruise.com. Use my promo code Tim. As long as you sign up by April 30th, you only have to put $50 down. You can see all the different package options there. You can decide what kind of room you want. You can go with just a simple inside stateroom like I get. I don't care if there's a window. I don't care if there's a door. All I care about is that there's a bed and a shower. I don't even need the toilet because there's so many.
You're going to need.
No, there's so many bathrooms all over the ship that you don't even. It doesn't even. We had the first cruise. We had a toilet that leaked. So I never even used it. So I just kept going. And then, you know, I had a roommate too. So, you know.
You had Tenny?
Yeah. So if you got to use
it. That don't count.
You know, if you're going to, you know, use the bathroom in the morning, you go out to the hallway and use the general public one so that you can, you know, not hold up somebody else from being. I spend a lot of time in the bathroom. So,
okay.
You're also, you know, eating at buffets every day, 3 times a day. So.
Got it.
But there's so you can take your pick of what room you want, but there are, you know, some of the fancier rooms are available. Some of the balcony rooms where you can have a sliding door that will look out over the ocean when you're out there in the middle of nowhere. You can see the UFOs right from your own room, from your window if you want. There's also different packages that you can choose. You get to choose 2 packages when you sign up. If you're a drinker at all, if you like to partake in alcoholic beverages, you definitely want to get the unlimited beverage package.
Makes sense.
Because, first of all, drinks are expensive on a cruise ship if you're buying them outright. You know, you can expect to pay $9 for a beer, $15 for a mixed drink, you know, $15 for a glass of wine. So that's what makes the unlimited beverage package so valuable, is because those drinks, it covers anything $16 or less usually. So it will cover almost anything as long as you're not getting top shelf stuff or anything too fancy. and you will drink a lot. So you want to make sure that you get that if that's what interests you. If you're not a drinker, though, they have other packages you can choose. One of them is the unlimited dining package. And just to give people a heads up, because I know a lot of folks will probably sign up for this that have never been on a cruise before. So just to give you an idea, there are some restaurants that you can eat in that is completely included in your stay. That's, they call these all-inclusive cruises. And so you can eat in the buffet. You can eat in the main dining rooms. They have some other themed restaurants that you can eat in that are all included with your just your stay on the ship. But then there are some other restaurants where they have, like a steakhouse. They have a Mexican restaurant. They have there's a Japanese place. So there's all these little I think they have a Brazilian rodizio.
Ooh.
So there's all these places that you can go and eat that will cost you a little bit extra, and they're not insanely expensive, but they're just extra from what you're already paying. So you can get a dining package, and then there's the Wi-Fi package and all that stuff. WickedWatersCruise.com. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more Spooky South Coast and our guest Michael Banti in just a moment. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz, talking about the paranormal, as we do each and every Saturday night. And, of course, we are streaming live on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com and on the Spooky South Coast YouTube channel and the Spooky South Coast app and all kinds of places. And pretty much wherever you can access YouTube, you can watch the show live on Saturday nights or on demand anytime afterward. Just whether it be through your phone, through your mobile device, through your laptop, through your smart television, and even if you have like an Xfinity cable box, you can access YouTube through that as well. So there's plenty of different ways to get the show and watch the show. Put us up on your big screen and spend your Saturday night with the Spooky Crew. Also, if you go to SpookySouthCoast.com or you go to the Spooky South Coast YouTube channel, you can see the chat room while the show is going on. And I want to say hi to everybody in the chat room tonight. Thank you for joining us there. And of course, Nightbot is in the chat room. Nightbot is our AI friend that will eventually someday kill us when the machines take over. And right, that's
right.
Like
I mean, it's not that intelligent, but it's getting there.
It's enough. It's enough that I'm worried about it. But Nightbot, you can tell Nightbot jokes. Well, you can ask Nightbot to tell you jokes. But Anna is in the chat room actually telling jokes to Nightbot.
Yeah,
which
Anna's better at joke telling, actually.
Yeah, hers are way funnier than Nightbot's. But you can check it out for yourself at SpookySouthCoast.com. And I just want to let everybody know, before we get into our discussion about Weird Fresno with Mike Banti, I want to let everybody know about Parabox Monthly. They have designs of silk screens onto super soft, super comfortable T-shirts. These are just very, like if you want something that you can kind of spend the day in and then still wear it while you're out investigating later on, and you're going to spend 20 out of 24 hours wearing one T-shirt, this is the shirt for you. But what's interesting about them is that there's a puzzle built into each shirt. The puzzles can be in the form of codes, ciphers, riddles, numbers, images, or other hidden gems. So you have fun exploring the design and putting the pieces together to figure out where to go next, in addition to just having a super comfortable T-shirt. So if you want to check it out for yourself, give them a try. You've got nothing to lose. You can choose from a month-to-month plan, a 3-month plan, or a 6-month plan. No contracts. You are free to cancel at any time. And Parabox Monthly has some really interesting themes to their T-shirts as well. Ghosts and haunted locations, UFO encounters and aliens, folklore and legends, cryptozoology, and urban legends. So you can find out more about how to get these really cool T-shirts at paraboxmonthly.com. And if you're going to go there and you're going to order, use the code SPOOKYLIVE and you'll save 10%. So just go to paraboxmonthly.com, use the promo code SPOOKYLIVE and save 10%. Get these T-shirts, start solving the riddles. We're gonna try and get some of them as well. I know I'm not gonna be able to solve the riddle, but I'm just happy to have something that's comfortable and easy to wear. So again, paraboxmonthly.com, promo code SPOOKYLIVE. All right, we're going to get into the discussion now with our guest tonight, Michael Banti. He is the webmaster extraordinaire of WeirdFresno.com, and he's a longtime friend of the show. This is the first time that we've had him on, though. Mike, are you with us? It's going pretty well. How are you? All right, hang on. We're just going to make sure that we get you going over the... I don't know. You should be able to hear him there. We're in mono. We're turned on. Yeah, it's on. No?
Okay.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Difficulties.
Let's see if we can figure it out as we go along on the fly. No, it's not you at all. It's totally us. It's still...
Yeah.
I'm going to let Matt keep messing with stuff and
Okay.
see if we can figure it out. Well, I do want to talk to you a little bit, Mike, first before we go, about exactly how you term yourself. You know, I called you the webmaster for WeirdFresno.com, but you know, what kind of title have you given yourself as the collector of all these stories?
You know, I don't know. I say director, owner. I've never really given myself a title. I just operator. You know, research is probably the best thing. If I actually introduce myself to somebody, I say I'm the researcher for Weird Fresno, and I'm the one that runs it. That's kind of how I introduce myself as it.
Because, you know, when you're chronicling these kind of stories, you kind of put some sense of responsibility on yourself then to become the steward of these stories. Is that something that you feel has happened with the stuff that you've shared on Weird Fresno?
You know, I actually like the title steward. Can I use that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I liked what you called Chris Balzano with the analytical folklorist, but I didn't want to steal that. But I guess I would say director. You know what I mean? But I'm just the one. I just call myself the researcher. I don't want to give myself a title.
You know, you can be an analytical folklorist too. Chris doesn't have to be the only one.
Okay, I'll remember that. I'll put that on my new business card.
Because if he is the only one, he'll get a swelled head about it. So we just don't worry, Chris. You can still be the dean of the analytical folklorists, but there just has to be others. So how did it come about? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that you spent a good amount of time in that area. Have you lived there your entire life?
Yeah, I lived here all my 40 years.
So then how did it come about that you started to realize that there's so many strange things happening that you could build an entire a website focusing on the stories of Fresno?
Well, I've been investigating since about 2000 or so. Got kind of burned out in 2008, was going through some stuff. And at the time here in Fresno, a lot of blogs started popping up. Some were talking about like food places, music or stuff. And I thought, hey, you know, I know all these stories from over the years. Nobody else is sharing them. I should do that. And that's kind of how it started.
And so when you start putting them out there, I mean, was it one of those things where it took a while to build momentum, or were people contacting you kind of right away saying, you know, I've heard that story, or giving you stories that maybe you hadn't heard yet?
I think it took about a month or two, and then people just started associating me more as the Weird Fresno guy than as Mike. It took off pretty quickly. I was surprised. I mean, nobody had seen anything like that before. And this was, you know, I said 2008. Ghost Hunters, I think, was starting to get popular around that time, right?
Yes.
So I think it was like in everybody's collective consciousness of what's going on. And I don't know. I just picked the right time, I guess.
I know that, you know, when we started this show, we had the benefit because of, you know, my connections and working there. We had the benefit of launching with a newspaper article and with pre-promotion on the radio. So people knew there was going to be a place to kind of share the South Coast stories on a regular basis. But for you to kind of come up and launch and to do so kind of unassumedly, to have a response like that after the first couple of months is pretty good.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I mean, certainly it means that there's people had been waiting to be able to share these stories.
Yeah, and people were just interested. You know, like you said, you know, and someone would say, hey, you know, I heard about that one story you wrote about the woman who walks down the road out in the country. I you know, my cousin's seen her. All of a sudden, you know, just all these stories started coming in, and it just kind of blew up from there.
Was there, as you were growing up and hearing these stories, was there something that you would say was kind of the definitive Fresno story or legend that kind of every school kid knew?
Wolf Manor, and I'm sure you guys have heard of that one. That one's actually in Clovis, which is right next door to Fresno, but everybody knows about the Wolf Manor story. I mean, I know Ghost Hunters was there, I think. Ghost Adventures. I know several of the TV shows are there, and that one's like kind of the one that's associated with Fresno. I wanted to kind of focus on the other ones that weren't really that known.
So, I mean, just to give the listeners who aren't familiar a little bit of a background on that, what is that story?
So, Wolf Manor, it was, I think the original house was built in the 1920s. I can't remember exactly. And over the years, it was a convalescent hospital. And the National Hospital, when it was built onto the back, I think it was maybe 10 or 20 rooms, nothing big. But it was basically an old folks home, for lack of a better term. It closed, and then someone bought it, turned it into a Halloween attraction. Extremely popular. I think one of the most popular in the state. Well, the city shut it down, and the owner decided that he wanted to turn it into a hotel. Unfortunately, because of building code issues, he wasn't. But for a while, he was giving tours, and a lot of people were seeing things there, from shadow figures. I know when I was there once, I was touched. I heard footsteps above. People were saying there was some dark energy in the basement. I can never confirm that, obviously, but still, that was reported. There was a lot of things there. I mean, it was definitely a hot spot. Unfortunately, the building was torn down. Now it's just an empty lot.
Well, I mean, empty lots can be haunted too. It's
right,
just,
and that's what I think too. I wonder what's going on there now. Unfortunately, it's been stopped because it's private property.
But when you have a place like that where people talk about it and people share that legend from generation to generation, I think it also helps kind of lend itself to people being more open about the possibility of other locations being haunted and other stories to share.
Right. And I know that one, it kind of took on an urban legend feel of sort, because when it was a Halloween attraction, the owner had actually written up a fictitious story with it. And unfortunately, that got intermixed with the actual history. It's kind of hard to tell what was real and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So people were saying stuff based off of the Halloween history, which wasn't true.
And part of the job of an analytical folklorist is to be able to kind of, look into what is legend and what isn't. And
Right.
when the lines become blurred like that, it makes your job harder as the person that's trying to put the truth out there. Or do you just kind of let the legend live as well, let the legend breathe on its own?
I always try to point out what was part of the Halloween history and what wasn't. But really, sometimes the people just want to believe what they want to believe.
I think that's I always call it the Liberty Valance effect. When legend becomes
Right.
fact, print the legend, and sometimes the stories that we tell about something is better than the true story, and so that's always going to kind of take the precedence. I've dealt with it with Lizzie Borden's, where there's stuff that people talk about there that we say, well, where did that information come from? Well, a psychic said it. Well, but I don't know if that psychic is any good, if they were telling the truth, or if they were just making it up. But it doesn't matter because it's become part of the narrative, and now it's become something people experience when they go there. It's just par for the course, I guess, in dealing with
Right.
these kind of topics. So you said, though, that was kind of the well-known one, but that you wanted to find the ones that people didn't know about. How did you go about finding them? Was it just some that you had known about and heard about before growing up, or did you really have to start digging into some dark corners of the library that people hadn't been to in years?
Some I knew about, and those were kind of the first ones I wrote because like I said, I knew about them. But as the site was doing, people started emailing me, hey, there's this story, you should look into it. One I remember, me and some friends were going to a park that's supposed to be both haunted and actually have a weird creature, like a strange creature in it. And as we're driving back, I just happened to see how, where the road that we're on was very busy. It was actually on the way to the casino. Excuse me. And I know for years that there's always at least one or two, traffic accidents that led to death on it. And I said, I wonder if this road's haunted. Just kind of, not really being serious. And my friend's like, oh yeah, there's a cop that pulls people over. He died on this road, so now he prevents people from speeding. Well, okay, that's kind of weird. And I kind of shared it on my Facebook page, and all of a sudden, 2 or 3 people, oh yeah, I've heard that story, and they started adding to it. Now, if it's true or not, I don't know, but it was like just a random thought I had that kind of led to more people telling me about it.
And I think that, a lot of these stories, especially, we deal with it here, kind of the culture and the makeup of people are what lend themselves to some of these stories actually having legs and actually sticking around over the years. Is that kind of the way that it goes with Fresno too? Is it the people and the makeup of the culture of Fresno that kind of help keep stories alive?
Excuse me, a little bit. Fresno's a bit more of a conservative area, so sometimes it's hard to. I'll hear stories, but when I go to actually research another location, they'll deny it, and that's kind of been the biggest roadblock for me.
That is a tough barrier, but I wouldn't think, somebody says California, I think, very, very liberal, very free, a lot of spiritual feelings out there, new agey stuff. Is
Fresno.
Not in Fresno?
We call ourselves the Bible Belt of California.
What is the cultural makeup of Fresno aside from being conservative? What's kind of the identity of the people there?
Well, there's a large Hispanic population, and a lot of their cultures have bled over into some of the stories that I've researched. There's a familiar folklore tale called La Llorona, basically your typical lady in white, and I know at least 4 different locations that have the same stories. We actually also have a very large Mon population, and I've been kind of researching that as of late, because one of the stories I first wrote about, it was this creature, for lack of a better term, and just someone commented one day, oh, that's a Mon dragon, you should look that up. Like a Mon dragon, and bit by bit I'm trying to educate myself.
And you said what again?
It was the person who told me what it was. They said it was a Mon dragon. We have a large Mon population here, Southeast Asian.
Oh.
And so
hill people from the upper
from Laos,
Mars.
Vietnam,
Yeah.
Cambodia, that area.
Yeah. Well, certainly, yeah. There's a lot of cultural mixing then of those legends, and that's another thing too, where we see the same thing here, where some of the Portuguese culture will mix in with some of the stories that are told. Some of the Native American culture mixes in here.
Cultures bring their own demons.
Right. Literally and figuratively.
Figuratively.
So with having that type of a confluence of people there, I'm assuming too that they're very protective of their stories, and so you might have a hard time cracking through some of the outer layers.
Right, and when I do share one of the stories, I want to make sure I get it right, and I'm respectful, and make sure that whoever's telling me is okay with me sharing it. I don't want to take something from somebody else that they've put their, if it's a story that they've talked about. I don't want to, I want to give them credit for it, I guess is the best way to put it.
And Mike, we're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. If you can just try and.
Oh, I'm sorry. My phone is horrible.
That's all right.
Is it? How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that sounds a lot better. And Matt,
Okay.
I boosted him up over here. Is that better for you? Okay. Hey, at least we made the phones work. That's an accomplishment for us. So,
okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just sorry about the phone. Hopefully it's better now.
Yeah, that much better. And so with trying to get through these layers and trying to get to, do you ever feel like sometimes the stories, as much as you're trying to present the complete information that you can, do you just hit a wall at some point and say, I'm never going to know the whole story here, and then do you make the decision to just share it anyway?
Yes, I've done that several times.
Because, especially when you're dealing with stories that are older, sometimes you're never going to get to the bottom of it. You're never going to get the complete thing, and sometimes part of a legend is better than a complete legend.
Yeah, and actually something like that happened recently. We have I want to say it's an early 20th century home that was built at a park, and for years I've been trying to get into the place. They won't let me, and I understand that. I get that. But I went to take some photos one day because I had no photos of it, and they actually told me not to take photos and I told them who I was, and they said they did not want to be associated with anything ghost related.
Yeah, unfortunately that's still a pretty predominant mindset for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, I mean, just taking a look at weirdfresno.com and seeing some of the stories that you share, I mean, you're cataloging a lot of history and folklore that might be forgotten otherwise.
And that's what I said to them. I said, this place is already known for being haunted. By you telling me not to put these photos up isn't going to change anything.
And not only that, like, you're giving them the opportunity to have their side of it told.
Well, I remember contacting them once, and I said, why don't you research the supposed paranormal part, get people in, lure them in with that, then teach them the actual history. I kind of got that from you, to be honest. I know you were doing that for a while with your legend tripping.
It is. That's the sneaky way that we teach people history. Like, we're going to go look for ghosts, and you're not going to learn anything. Ha ha, we fooled you.
But they weren't interested. And once again, it's that conservative mindset of the area.
I mean, also, though, too, part of the good part of that is you will find out that when the stories aren't shared, they tend not to become diluted and not to become, mixed with other people's interpretations, too. Like, sometimes those closely guarded stories can be the most pure.
Yeah.
But it's prying them out of them that's the problem. What is probably the one story that you've been trying to get to the bottom of? That what's been your Moby Dick, your white whale that you just can't figure out or solve?
Oh, there's a lot, but there's a story here. It's actually a creature story, and they were calling the Fresno Nightcrawlers. If you do a YouTube search, the original video will pop up, and it's hard to describe. But there were these two. Somebody was having issues with, I think, dogs ruining their yards, so they set up a closed circuit TV to film what was going on. And so one night there was these two creatures, long-legged, no arms, and I want to say maybe 24, 30 inches tall, very long legs, just walked across the yard.
Yeah.
And I've seen other videos, but they look like they're completely different than this one. And I know Sci-Fi's Fact or Fake actually came here, and they actually contacted me about it to try to debunk it, and they couldn't. And it's the only video that I always consider myself a skeptical believer. I believe, but I want you to prove it to me.
Right.
This one I couldn't figure out what it was. It's just an odd story, and it's only been one sighting.
Well, but sometimes, though, with stuff like that, and we've seen it happen here, and I know, Moniz, you've encountered it during your career, that those are the kind of things that, even if you can get to the bottom of it, it's still almost too unbelievable for people to believe. That you can try and chase down as much of the factual end of it that you can, but in the end, even that's not going to convince people. So even having part of the story is going to be, enough to open people's minds up to it. Because some of this stuff, even if you found out the complete story, it would almost make it more unbelievable than just having part of it.
No, I've run into exactly what you're talking about. I'll give you a good example. The house in Westport.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For Mike's benefit, I'm sure he's run into things like this before too. Somebody claims a house is haunted, but the real history behind it, this house in Westport was actually a house that, was said to be built on an Indian burial ground, even though there is an actual cemetery behind the house.
Right.
And that, there were coffins inside the house and people disappeared and reappeared on different floors and things like that. Okay. The real truth is the house was foreclosed on by the original owners, and it was recently built in the 20th century.
Yeah,
and
it was the 60s, 1960s.
Yeah. Early 1962, if my research I remember correctly, something like that. And after that, the homeowners got foreclosed, and it was picked up by a funeral home. to use as storage.
Just
so they
as storage, yep.
yeah, so they store coffins and parts of coffins in it, and kids would break in, and story confabulates, and all of a sudden the house
But
is.
to your point, though, the fact that the story has been solved to some degree, it doesn't change the experiences that people have had. I mean, we've
Right.
heard from police officers who have said, "I was parked in the driveway
Yep.
and watching weird things happening inside and lights turning on and off and
Yep.
things like that when nobody was in the house." So, I'm sure it's the same thing there in Fresno too, Mike, where sometimes it's almost like you'd ruin a story by actually being able to tell people the truth about it.
Yeah, no, I have one similar to that. That's basically what Matt said.
Yeah, well, feel free to share it.
Oh, well, it's an old home, once again, early 20th century, and it's been fenced off for years. I know it's on the local historical registry, but it's abandoned, and people, they think it's haunted because it's fenced off and it's kind of overgrown with weeds and stuff. I've researched the history. Nothing's happened there that could lend it to be haunted, but people still say they've seen lights at night, that they've seen shadows moving around and stuff like that. Now, is it true or not? I don't know, but
Could be true. Could just be drunks and crackheads camping
that's
out.
what I was thinking,
Yeah.
given the area.
Well, and I know that even that happens here too, where
Drunks and crackheads. Hello.
right, but that happens here too, where like the mundane turns out, the explanations turn out to be mundane, and it will kind of sink a lot of people's fascination with a location or with a story. But I think that as time goes by, the story will outlive the truth.
Yeah.
And so, while people might say now, oh, that stuff about the house in Westport probably wasn't true. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when people are telling the stories, that stuff won't matter anymore.
Right.
The important part will be that people went there and had these weird experiences, and it doesn't matter that they were, debunked.
Just like stories will still continue out there in his area about Wolf Manor.
Mhm.
Okay. Even though it's a parking lot now, basically, the stories are still living well beyond the building.
Right, Mike, I'm sure people drive by there and say, that's where Wolf Manor used to be.
I still drive by it sometimes, yeah.
And certainly with these stories kind of, they're going to outlive us. Even us as the folks who share them and tell them, they're going to live long past we're done telling them, and they'll still develop, and they're malleable, and they're living, and they're breathing, and that's the way that it's supposed to be. It doesn't really matter so much
Living
about
stories about the dead.
right. It doesn't really matter like what is in the end provable or not. What matters is what are people willing to believe, and what are they willing to kind of hope and share with these stories too.
Right, and that's how I've always approached it is, here's the story. I want to share with, before I did this site, nobody knew half the stories. I didn't know half the stories. But now I feel like maybe it's adding a bit to the local culture, like you said.
And kind of, create, like we don't really tell stories anymore like we used to as a species, as mankind. We don't sit around the fire and tell these stories anymore. The ghost stories is kind of one of the still true storytelling forms that we're, everything else has become held up his phone with, the internet, but the internet has caused a lot of things to become very self-centered, especially social media, where we're making ourselves the stars of our own stories. And paranormal stories are one of the few things that we can take ourselves out of the story and just allow the story to be on its own without us having to be part of it to share it. We're telling that folklore, that legend, and not feeling the need to make ourselves the star of our own story.
Point taken.
Yeah, it's not in all cases, but I think that there's still a good amount of them. And what I like too about Weird Fresno, Mike, is that you don't just stick to, one type of story. It's not just ghost stories. It's not just cryptid stuff. You have a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything.
UFO hotspot out there.
A lot of UFO stories on weirdfresno.com.
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
Nothing lately, unfortunately. It's been kind of quiet.
A lot of them involve stuff going in and out of the ocean out there.
Really? I haven't heard anything.
Look up Preston Dennett.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, do you have? Does it happen in flaps? Are they isolated sightings that happen now and then? Do they come in waves?
The only flap that we have, and it's during the summertime, is on Interstate 5 towards the western part of Fresno County. People have been seeing these lights there for years. And the description that I heard, I'm like, okay, that sounds like a crop duster. So, but I've seen video of them, and it's completely different. One, it's hard to judge the size, but it was definitely triangle-shaped. And it had maybe 5 or 6 red blinking lights on 2 of the sides. I had no idea what that was. And it was moving. It was moving continuously. I thought maybe it was, several objects of formation. It just didn't look like that.
I mean, there is, there's a lot, and Moniz can probably speak to this better than I can, but there is a long history of there being frequent UFO sightings along the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that we've had some, a lot of experimental aircraft that has been out there. Some suspicions that there's stuff that has come from Asia across the Pacific Ocean. But there's also quite a few stories that I've heard of, West Coast UFOs that are certainly not like anything that we have. Probably, I would think, because if I had to take into account as to why they might be more prevalent there, one guess I would have, Moniz, is that it's a place that's a lot more geologically active with earthquakes and the shifting of the plates out there, that maybe there's something about the energy in that area that would draw these, if they are beings from another planet, maybe there's a reason why they're coming to that area.
Well, you have a number of, the West Coast is dotted with military bases up and down the coast.
Mm-hmm.
You have a number of power plants based right along the coast. You have a big tectonic fault line that's right up and down the coast. That whole West Coast has a lot of things that would interest people from somewhere else.
And there's some nuclear action too as well.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
West Coast, yeah. It's where a lot of the uranium was refined for the bomb and stuff like that. They still have stuff out there.
So certainly there's a reason for, Mike, for somebody to be watching you from the skies above.
Oh, definitely. Well, I do know that about, I believe, 100 miles or so straight is Area 51. And then Edwards Air Force Base is about 2.5 hours south of me. So there's, I'm thinking a lot of them might be military.
Vandenberg.
Because I know in the 80s, we actually had an F-117 crash, I want to say near Bakersfield, which is kind of in between me and Los Angeles.
Yep.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if half the things that's been seen are just black ops projects.
And, we in talking about the different types of things that you deal with there and having a high level of UFO sightings, cryptid sightings is another thing that happens quite a bit out there. Do you have some cryptid legends that are kind of based in Fresno?
Well, we definitely have Bigfoot sightings. There's dots barking. I'm sorry.
As long as it's not Bigfoot barking.
We definitely have a lot of Bigfoot sightings up in the foothills. I'm about an hour from Yosemite, so there's that. We have some chupacabra sightings, but to me they look like the cases of the dots with mange.
Yeah.
But people still say it's a chupacabra. There's the night crawlers that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and one I actually just found out this week, and I'm actually in the middle of researching it. Somebody claims that they saw a pterosaur flying over Fresno in 2007.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to find out about that. We get some Thunderbird sightings, but this is the first time I've heard of a pterosaur.
There's some old photographs, quote unquote, that claim to be of pterosaurs shot out in those areas back in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
I've seen that one, yeah.
I mean,
There's several of them. Whether any of them are real, or there's only one that I know of that could possibly be, but it's they're all suspect in my book.
Same here, agreed.
I mean, but there's, there's enough of a diversity of wildlife out your way that it's possible that something could stick around and exist for millions of years. Not obviously one single particular creature, but that it could still hang around and survive. But I'm sure you've also gotten some strange emails over the years of things that just even seem too crazy for you to believe.
One of my favorites is underneath the Fresno airport here, which is also the National Guard Air Base, is a nuclear storage facility, and there is a quote-unquote high-speed train that goes the speed of sound from here to Cheyenne.
Really?
Where NORAD's stored. I worked at the airport for a while, and they didn't show me that part when I was there.
Well, I mean, you never know. Maybe there's just parts that they didn't let you go into, but that would be kind of a hard one for me to swallow.
Yeah, but I mean, it was interesting, and I had a chuckle. But the person they were serious. They said that they talked to somebody that worked there, and that underneath the airport was an underground military base, which was linked directly with the NORAD facility.
I mean, but sometimes it just takes one or two people to share a story to kind of give it legs. I saw one story on weirdfresno.com where it talked about, you'd gotten emails about an underground society of vampires. Is that
yes?
That's something that looks like it didn't really pan out, though.
It didn't. I originally got a couple emails, like you said, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, and I put it up there. I wanted to share it, see if I can get any feedback. Nothing.
I almost wonder with stories like that, though, like if there isn't some truth to them, but also, they know that you're on to them.
Could be.
So they kind of hide a little bit better than they normally would. I have to give you credit, though, because it's easy for us. We're a group. We're not a paranormal group. We're not a team or anything, but there's at least a group of us. There's 4 of us that do the show, and then we have a network of people. So when somebody calls us with some sort of a strange claim or something that seems like it might be dangerous to go into, like we have safety in numbers. Are you going and checking these things out on your own? Do you let people know where you're going when you're going and exploring a possible underground society?
Oh, no. I learned law and order not to go by myself. I have one of my best friend that I've been ghost hunting with, since we were 17. Basically, he goes with me.
All right, because again, safety in numbers, especially when somebody sends you an email and tells you that. Yeah. You never know where you're being led into and what kind of trap they could be setting for you.
Well, I figured I was a sacrifice or something.
But sometimes though we say that we don't want to become the story. We just want to document the story, but if you got to go, I mean, at least go being part of the story. That's the way I look at it.
Well, I've been told this, and I said this over the years, I'm more afraid of the living than the dead. I'll go into a supposed haunted house, whatever. It's just when you get the people like those vampire society, I was a little hesitant. I'm not going to lie.
Well, come on into the underground places. It's fine. You'll be okay. Yeah, no, thanks. What is probably the weirdest thing that you've experienced, in researching these? What have you encountered with and seen with your own eyes that you just couldn't believe?
This actually didn't happen when I was researching, but this is kind of what got me into this whole field. My mom's house was haunted, which I didn't know about when I lived there. And one night I'm going to bed, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I see this, this figure. There was a female figure in a white dress go from my sister's room across the hallway and into the bathroom. And we had a hardwood floor, and I heard the dress, kind of rustling along on the floor. I thought it was my sister sleepwalking, so I turn on the light. Nobody's in there. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. Go in her room, turn the light on. She's fast asleep wearing sweats and a T-shirt. And I knew I saw someone, a female figure that was wearing a dress. Go to bed. Next day, I'm talking to my mom about it. Just real nonchalantly, oh, yeah, that's the previous owner's wife. She died here. And it's always been kind of one of my favorite stories because that was the first time I ever saw something.
I mean, we say here that we have old ghosts, so that there's a lot of activity that happens here because we've had hundreds of years of we'll call it, white people history, to be able to kind of go back and look at. And we look at, us being East Coasters, we look at California and we say there isn't quite the same length of history for, quote unquote, white people history to have some of these stories, but there is still a good amount of history out there. And there is still a good amount of tragedy and things that have happened that could leave a stain on a place.
Right. Well, before this was America, it was Mexico. And, there's missions up and down the state. The closest one to me is, I think it's 100 miles, San Miguel. And that one's supposed to be haunted.
And has that kind of, created, here we have the Bridgewater Triangle. Do you have some sort of a vortex in that area that you think might be the reason why you have so much weird phenomena taking place?
I've heard people use the term the Fresno Triangle, but it was more UFOs. They were linking the Fresno airport to Area 51 and then Edwards Air Force Base. But like the triangle that you guys have, no, we don't have anything like that.
But I mean, it seems like you've got the activity for it. Just whether or not somebody's actually kind of defined parameters for it, it seems like there's enough weird stuff going on and different types of phenomena that you could say that there is. I mean, it might not be a perfect triangle, but there definitely seems to be some sort of a thinning of the veil there.
Yeah. Well, we're in a valley, and maybe, I guess you could say we're like a valley instead of a triangle. There's no really set shape like you said.
I don't know. We'll come up with something catchy, and you can market it and do a documentary and make T-shirts and stuff.
No, that'd be great.
To help with the research. Has there been a lot of interest in the stories that you share from, from some of these television shows and authors who are writing books, that people come to you and said, we really want to start featuring some of these stories?
I've had some interest in the past. Nothing lately. Like I said, that one, that Nightcrawler video, I got contacted by the Sci-Fi Channel several times on that one. National Geographic contacted me about a UFO sighting up here. I want to say that was 2012. And then somebody was doing a documentary about Bigfoot in Yosemite, but that one never panned out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, when producers kind of get their eye on a place, they start to come up with all these ideas of how they want to tell the stories. And sometimes the stories just don't kind of fit into what they're envisioning. And they're doing a disservice to the stories themselves, because they might say, well, that'll be too hard to film, or, we can't really pull that off in the way that we need to with the budget that we have. And the stories just don't work that way. The stories have a life of their own, and you've kind of got to be willing to bend what it is that you're doing to them. As you've shown over the years, chronicling these stories, you have to go where they take you. You can't say, I'm going to do it this way. You have to kind of just serve the story the best way that you can.
Right. And when some were just scheduling conflicts, it didn't work out, unfortunately.
I think, though, that, as you've been chronicling these over the years, the important part is that it's showing that there's, to some degree, repeatability. The same stories, the same legends might not happen over and over again, but you're having similar instances of all different types of phenomena. So that's going to draw people in that are looking into this stuff. So it's only a matter of time before we see the weird Fresno TV series starring Mike Banti.
Well, I do know if you search Paranormal in Fresno, my site's the first thing that comes up.
Well, there you go.
And that's how a lot of these shows find me, is they'll just do a very random search.
With all these weird stories, is there a big paranormal community out there?
There used to be. Like most things, it gets popular for a while, then it kind of dies off, pardon the pun. Things are kind of picking up back again. I actually recently, people were asking me to start a Facebook group, which, for them to share their own stories, and I did. It's been pretty active. I was surprised, actually.
I mean, that's the best part of doing what you do is giving people the dialogue to be able to share these stories and to have a place to go with them when they do have a weird experience, somewhere where they can share it, where they think people are going to be willing to believe them. And that's what I think, every area can benefit from something like that, to say, here's a place where you can come and say that and nobody's going to judge you for it.
Right. Yeah, I just want to give them a platform where no one's going to judge them and they can share their stories.
But then again, too, there's the same problem that we run into, and that others who document these type of things do is, how much can you believe a person that comes at you? How do you take stock in the story? I mean, have there been stories that you've been tipped off to that you've said, it just doesn't sound like it's anything that's even worth my time to pursue?
Well, there was one definitely. Going back to that Nightcrawler video, someone had sent me another video several years later of a different incident with supposedly the same creatures up by Yosemite. And I saw the video and I was kind of hesitant, but my BS meter was already going off, but I don't want to be that skeptical. And so I looked at the person's YouTube channel. They had just created a YouTube channel. There was nothing else on there. Okay, maybe they created this for this, but they said that they were paranormal investigators. And I contacted them, nothing. And just even to this day, that's the only video on their YouTube channel was that one. And comparing that to the original one, it looks fake. It looks like things have been superimposed. It's just very bad special effects.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is sad that even in this day and age that there's people who, for whatever reason, want to fake this stuff. You would think that there's enough out there that people can go out and have their own experiences, so they don't have to make something up to get attention, but it still happens. And it makes it harder because it muddies the waters for the casual person to say, well, why should I believe anything if, that one story turns out not to be true? Then how can I be sure that any of this stuff is actually true?
Well, and I've talked to people. I'm sorry, did I cut someone off?
No, but just Moniz was breathing heavy.
Feedback.
He got excited there.
People tell me that one's also real because I think some people just have a predetermination on these things, and when you tell them and you actually put the evidence in front of them, the facts, they don't want to believe it. They'll get angry.
That is true. I mean, that's the hardest part about it is if you're trying to be the person that's trying to vet the story and deciding if you want to believe it or not, and something just seems like you don't want to follow down that path, you run the risk of hurting somebody's feelings if they are telling the truth, but it just doesn't seem to resonate with you, if it doesn't seem to be worth your time or what have you. You are running the risk of hurting somebody who this could be the most profound thing that ever happened to them. So it's hard to have that. Even though we like to have that built-in BS meter, it's probably going to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
I try and give everybody their say, and then maybe I don't call you back, or maybe everything sounds really exciting at first, and then we kind of lose contact over time. I let you down easy, like a weird girlfriend. And one other thing that I noticed too in reading through some of your blogs is you've had clown problems out in that way.
Oh God. That
kind of predate the clown problems that we were having around here.
I think we were the start of it. I don't know what happened. They came out of nowhere. And I know somebody was doing like an art project down in Bakersfield, but I don't know if that just inspired copycats or what, but it was getting pretty bad for a while. Like the police were notified and the police were alerting people, watch out for these clowns. It was bad.
And is it subsided or is it still ongoing?
No, it's subsided.
I that whole clown thing, I still say it's, juggalos on meth.
I don't know. But I will say this. I don't think it's coincidental that the show Baskets takes place in Bakersfield and it's about a clown. So maybe
I didn't even see that show. I'll have to watch it.
Oh, you've never seen it? Oh, it's weird. It's a comedy, but it's not funny. But it's still funny. It's very hard to describe, but it's Zach Galifianakis as a clown at a rodeo in Bakersfield.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
But there's a juggalo on the show too, so he works at Arby's. The juggalo.
Appropriate.
Yeah, he runs the Arby's now. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, actually, I think the prerequisite to work at Arby's is you have to be a juggalo.
It's on the application. In order to get hired at Arby's, you have to know at least 4 Joker's cards for the cards to be able to. Moniz is looking at me like I have no idea what you're talking about. He's from the Juggalos. From the he does know.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm even more creeped out. I liked it better when I thought it was over
actually
your
like
head.
Insane Clown Posse.
They're not bad.
The Great Malenko.
Well, we can debate that off the air for sure. So Mike, if people want to share stories with you with Weird Fresno, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Best way to go to my site. I have a number on there. Can I give it out?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's area code 559, and it's 481-1057. Or you just email me at weirdfresno@gmail.com.
And what I like about the site too is it's an easy layout to go through and to try to find all the different stories. If you're somebody that's thinking about going out to the Fresno area to spend some time, maybe take a vacation or whatnot, you can actually build yourself a nice, weird Fresno vacation based around the site and seeing some of these places that Mike writes about there. So, but just don't go into any underground places on your own, and don't go into Arby's unless you speak Juggalo. Those are the requirements. All right, well, Mike, thanks for joining us and for sharing some of the stories that you've collected over the years.
Oh no, Tim, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's always great to be able to find out about places that we've never been to. But if we ever get out there, you'll be the first person that we look up.
Well, one of these days, I am definitely going to visit the Triangle. That's on my top 5 list of paranormal places to go.
Definitely let us know if you do.
I will do that.
We will take you to all the best places that aren't Arby's. Take care.
Do we even have an Arby's?
We don't. We don't have an Arby's, so you don't have to worry at all.
Oh, that's good.
All right. You have a great night, Mike. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you.
And that is Michael Banti. You can check out his site, weirdfresno.com, if you want to find out more about Weird Fresno. It sounds like a very weird place.
I've been through it.
I've
never had.
I've been to California once. It was just to LA for a couple days. So if I ever get out there, I will want to spend some time in Fresno. I want to check out some of these spots that he writes about there. It seems like there's a lot of great folklore there, urban legend there.
Yep.
That goes, so like I said, it doesn't matter if it's true. I just want to go there and kind of experience it for myself and see what happens. So weirdfresno.com is the site if you want to find out more for yourself. All right, we are just about out of time for this week's show. We'll be back next week. As we said earlier, we'll be joined by Tom Reed. He's going to talk with us about his UFO experience and about the UFO monument that is being moved. You'll see stories. We'll share those stories out as they hit the news wires this week. We'll share them out on the Spooky South Coast social media. If you want to get in touch with us, Spooky Crew at SpookySouthCoast.com. If you have any stories or guest ideas that you want to share with us, you can do it that way. Spooky Crew at SpookySouthCoast.com is our email. Follow us on Twitter at SpookySC. Subscribe and follow all of our videos on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. So many different ways to reach out to us and get in touch with us. And of course, thank you to everybody on the Dark Matter Digital Network that listens to the show as it's replayed there as well. If you're listening to this show live now, go over to Midnight in the Desert because Keith is going to be having an Art Bell bumper music dance party. So until next week, for Matt, for Stephanie, I'm Tim. Stay spooktacular.